if you're not really present, then you're not effective in what you're doing.
Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it The Why and the Buy.
All right.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Christie Walters with the Why and the Buy podcast. And unfortunately, today I'm without my sidekick. Jeff is actually at a very important meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he will not be with us today, but he is always with us in spirit. And he sends his regards to our guest, Dennis Buttimer, who is joining us today from the ATL. Dennis and I are friends from the National Speakers Association chapter here in Atlanta, and I'm really excited. I had a chance to, over the last few months, to get to know Dennis and Angela, and Dennis and my husband have connected as well. So it's a real special treat for me to have you on the podcast today, Dennis. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Christie, and it's really my pleasure. Appreciate you having me.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited about this topic, and I'm going to set it up a little bit for folks. But before I do, I wanted to maybe give you a moment to talk about your background, what it is you do, what you do for corporations, and why you think this really fits in the sales and leadership arena. And you know, I'm very passionate about this, so I'll back you up. But I know you've got a good perspective on mindful mojo. So tell us a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
why this is a passion for you.
Of course, great. And again, thanks for having me, Christie. And, you know, it's hard to believe it's been three something decades since I've gotten out of graduate school. And it's really, I guess in many ways shocking, you know, where did the time go and all of that. But in that time, I've done a number of things. You know, I went and I got my undergraduate in psychology and then my master's in counseling. And also, I got various certifications, organizational certifications, and also in coaching. And, you know, most of my life, although I've worked, most of my working life, although I've worked in various settings and with different groups of people and organizations, it really has a common thread, and that is, you know, how can I help people realistically and practically to live healthier, happier lives and be more productive. And, you know, that has taken its form in many different areas, because I started off actually as a clinical counselor working in treatment centers and in hospitals, working with all kinds of issues, from addictions to mental health issues, et cetera. And it was an eye opener. It really was, and I really learned a lot during that time. And I went on to do a lot of, actually I managed an employee assistance program, EAP, if you will, for many, many years, 17 years to be exact. And in that time, I learned, you know, a lot of hands-on things about, you know, training and stress debriefings and coaching and counseling, a lot of things that I could do. And in that time, I think I learned what works and what doesn't. You know, I think we can all appreciate that when you're in school, although that knowledge is needed and you want to keep learning things, that there really can be sometimes a disconnect between what you're learning in a book and what you're applying realistically in everyday life. So, you know, from there, just having done that kind of work and been in private practice now with my wife, Angela, for, turns out, right at 15 years. So I guess I'm revealing my age. I'm getting up there a little bit. But in that time, it's been neat. We've worked a lot with couples that are dealing with stress and, you know, at times individuals that are depressed and going through transitions, whether it's at work or maybe they're going through a divorce, or, you know, they've just had a loss in meaning. You know, they're having some existential crises of some kind. And so in doing that kind of work, I've also been guided into these other places. I never thought I would be like working a lot with cancer patients and their families. And that's been a very heartening process over the last 11 of those 15 years in private practice. So I've been really honored with and delighted to connect with so many different types of people. And, probably like with you, there's been some real challenges with certain people, certain groups and all that. But in the overall, it's been very positive, very gratifying.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and I tell you, practical application is the best teacher ever, right? So, I know you're a member of ICF and the International Coaches Federation, or is it Federation? I'm a brand new member. In fact, I just took a new member orientation this morning. So I'm excited to start that journey for myself as well. But I'm interested on a couple of different fronts, a couple of things that I wanted to talk with you about, and I want to bridge a little bit for our audience that although you really focus in on counseling and you do a lot of volunteer work with the Cancer Center, there's a lot of discussions and articles that you've written. You and Angela did a TEDx talk not too long ago, and we'll talk about that as well, about this idea of the mind-body connection. Right. And that is not, because I can hear a couple of people right now going, oh, am I going to listen? Am I not going to listen?
That's right.
Stop. Don't press pause yet.
That's right.
Because there is so much tied to mind-body connection and successfulness. And I love this concept. And I know you do a workshop with some folks called Mindful Mojo for peak performance. And I'd love for you just to share with us a little bit more about what you've learned or what you've seen, especially in that particular arena.
Yeah. Let me say, especially for the guys out there, don't hit pause. I'm a guy too. It's going to be okay. But yeah, it is very interesting because of course, my training was what we might call from the top down, meaning that you get people to do talk therapy and coaching and all of that. And while it's really, really important, is sometimes and often you can be as effective working from the bottom up, meaning that working with the body also affects the mind as much as the mind can affect the body. So when you use these mind-body approaches, it's just utilizing what is already true, and that is that it's all connected. In fact, there's some research that's very brief, but Candace Pert in 1997, she's a hard-nosed scientist, and she really demonstrated this mind-body link and found out that there is many neuroreceptors around the heart and the gut as there are the head. And what that actually means is that, when you have a calling of the heart or a gut feeling, it isn't some frou-frou, flaky idea. This is actually hard science as to how and why this works. So, when we're talking about Mindful Mojo, it's really about coming into the present moment, right? So Angela and I call it that. A lot of it is really around mindfulness, which is, a 2,000-year-old practice. But the idea is that you're coming back into the present moment over and over again, and you're trying to accept things as they are, not agree with them, but deal with things as they are right then without judgment, so that you then can make better decisions. The reason that we practice mindfulness so much and teach this to people is because the point of power is always in the present moment. Now, we spend all this time in the future. So whether you're in sales or whether you're a nurse in a hospital or a parent, a lot of times the idea is you'll get stuck in patterns of the mind where, you're way out in the future, worried about this. Oh my gosh, even a positive thing, planning a vacation or something good that's coming up, that's a really good thing. But sometimes we can find ourselves not in the present moment, and similarly in the past, stuck in regret and concern and all these things, replaying old junk. And so in the moment, when you're in your job or in your relationship, if you're not really present, then you're not effective in what you're doing. And so the ideas and the techniques, the practical techniques that we teach have to do with being present so that you can be more effective. You can make better choices. And we even say this, we have this saying, Christie, that when you learn these techniques, like through what we call Mindful Mojo, you move from habitual reactionary patterns. So these are unskillful patterns where you just react off the cuff. You move from habitual reactionary patterns to more skillful responding. So if you plug that into work, you could probably think, people in your audience maybe could think at times, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have said that to my boss, or, I blurted that out to that customer, and I talked over them when they were trying to say something. And so that would be unskillful, right?
Right.
As you practice being more skillful, then you're able to pause, breathe, and then you can respond from your best and highest self in the situation, regardless of what it is.
Oh, I love that. I can think of so many people right now that could use that advice. And we talk a lot about being present in sales. Oftentimes, salespeople get really wrapped up in their own soundtrack, right? So it's the okay, what do I need to say? What's important? How do I close? What's that line? Especially when you're young or you're fairly new to an environment, that tendency to lean on all of this stuff you've been told to parrot really starts to drive your entire interaction, when ultimately sales is just life. It is about connecting with people, and being present in that connection is so critical. And I love that idea of breaking those habitual patterns. And by doing that, you really open up a lot of creative juices to say, oh, you know what? Hey, this doesn't have to take the same path it always did.
Indeed.
Meaning there may be something really big here that I've never even thought of.
Right, no question. No question whatsoever, Christie. And in fact, really good news for all of us. Today is a new day. Yeah. And moreover, this is a new moment right this second. So I'm no longer condemned to those patterns of the past. So when you were talking about what goes around in salespeople's heads sometimes and all of that, we might even call it like the top 10 tunes, that you're reciting these things over and over again. And it turns out that we're, according to scientists, we think about 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, most of which are repetitive loops. And honestly,
I really want to write mine down right now. I have no idea what those are.
I know, right? Oh my goodness. Yeah, some of them are. And to that end, Christie, I mean, when we get people to actually say what some of these thoughts are, some of them are really, self-derogatory and honestly very negative. And you and I were talking before we came on about, avoiding the news. Just you want to be an informed citizen, but at the same time, that you turn on it doesn't matter what side you are on or what you're looking to, you're going to get these continuous loops, and you're just training the mind to focus on what's negative versus what's positive. There's a lot more positive in the world than negative.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, I teach a class on attitude, and it's all about getting a yes attitude. And this is all from Jeffrey Gitomer's material. One of the critical elements, and honestly, one of the elements that attendance of the class would argue with me about, and honestly, so did I argued with Jeffrey a little bit about this as well, is the idea of not watching the news. If you're spending more than 30 minutes a day on any news outlet whatsoever, it's too much. Our brains are not wired that way. And this is probably the first time in history since I've been teaching this course that I have finally had more people say, you know what, I've kind of taken myself off of it too. Just in the last 6 months. So, when you think about what is it that we need to change our world, a lot of it is changing that belief. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to I will not be seen as ill-informed.
Yes.
If I don't know everything and every angle that is out there. We weren't programmed for 24/7 news.
That's right. And we've gotten to not only with the news, Christie, but where we just can no longer take in any more information, and a lot of it, by the way, is opinions, but as well, all of the technology, while it's a blessing, it can also be a bane, because you get all this information going on, but also like I'm being a little facetious, but like you're riding down the Colorado River and you're videoing it and you're trying to get the darn thing on Facebook at the same time, and you're missing the whole experience of being in the river.
Yep.
This sort of thing. So yeah, it gets to be too much.
Yeah. I tell you, this is why I like those trips that require you to go off the grid. Mm-hmm. We take at least one a year. We're about to go off the grid here in a couple of weeks, but we do one a year.
It'll be neat. It helps.
Yeah, that's huge. So I want to shift gears just a little bit, and maybe have you take us through some techniques. And I know we don't have time to go through one of your workshops, which I know are phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Yes. But what would be a technique you might provide to our listeners? And if you're driving, don't close your eyes while you're driving, those types of things. So, what would you recommend for maybe a couple of minute little exercise? Yeah,
let me give you a couple of quick things. One, if you're driving, by no means do what I'm about to say, but
pull off the side of the road. Yeah.
The first thing you can do that we can all do in a meeting or in a conversation, you can always do what I'm about to tell you to do. And that is to breathe into your belly. And it seems like a simple technique. And you say, well, what is that going to do? Well, when you're under stress, you breathe up into your chest, and you breathe too fast, or you end up holding your breath. More and more, we're in that mentality of holding our breath in this world. So when you breathe in through your nose, you elicit a chemical called nitric oxide. You fill up the belly with air and take that same breath up into your chest. When you exhale, you can simply breathe back out through your nose, or at that point, breathe out through your mouth and let your stomach deflate like a balloon where all the air is going out. You just do that slowly and repetitively about 3 to 5 times. So you're driving down the road, you're stuck in Atlanta, New York traffic, whatever. And wow, what can you do? Oh, but you can always breathe. You're stuck in that line at the store. What can you do? Breathe. So you do that a few times, and you kick in the parasympathetic nervous system, which causes the body to relax. So then you're in more control and you feel better and you can think better. Now, there's something similar that you can do for those folks who are listening that may be able to do this. And that is, you would place your right hand on your chest over your heart, and then your left hand over your right, and you're just lightly interlocking the thumbs, all right? They're just touching like wires, all right? So if you have a couple of minutes at work where you could pull away to do this in probably a private place or in a parked car, you just have your feet on the floor, sit up nice and straight, close your eyes, and you're just breathing in and breathing out. And here's what you do, very brief sort of meditation or sacred pause here. As you breathe in, you feel the breath coming up through the soles of your feet all the way up to the top of your head. On the exhale, feel it and see it cascade all the way back down the length of your body and out. And you just do that. I'm going to go a little fast here so they'll be able to understand. And you'll do that a few rounds just like that. And then here's what you'll do. You'll keep breathing like that. But on the inhale, you will just simply add the words to yourself. You say these words, I am. You say that to yourself. On the out breath, you say the word here. I am here. Do that a few rounds. Release your hands down. Notice pleasant sensations. Slowly open your eyes. And what you'll almost always notice after just 2 or 3 minutes is that your body is indeed relaxed and you have more clarity to the mind. And so with that, you're placing your hands in this, it's actually a yoga pose, eagle pose over your chest, which is calming. So you want to be able to calm down from stress. Also, you're reminding yourself when you're I am here, you're focusing the mind, of course, on something it can concentrate on. But you're also reminding yourself, no, I'm not here up in all this craziness of my head. I'm down here. I'm heart-centered. I'm down here where I can feel myself. And moreover, it brings you into the present moment.
Yeah, I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see needing to do that from time to time, just on just throughout the day.
Absolutely.
I think that's huge.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears completely now and talk about your experience with TEDx. So you and Angela just recently did a talk a couple of months ago, I think, right?
Yes, that's right.
Tell me about that experience. What was that like, and what did you learn?
Well, it was a tremendous experience, and we were delighted. What would be the word? We're exhilarated to be chosen for this. We were actually nominated for it, and we're able to do it based on work we'd done with cancer patients and others in the community. But in any case, we were looking for a way to kind of jazz it up, so we said mindful mojo versus mindfulness. So the title was Diffusing Stress Through Mindful Mojo. And we looked at 4 distinct things that people can do to lower their stress levels. In our talk, it was innovative in the respect that Angela and I were both on stage and we volleyed back and forth. It took a little bit of work. Actually, it took 50 hours of work. We were told that it would take that long, and we thought, well, we've spoken plenty, probably not. Yes.
Right. Yeah. You weren't newbies at this, right? So
right. No. And it was a rude awakening in certain respects. And of course we were, frankly, it was a little nerve wracking getting up there because you have to do it right the first, there's no do-overs when you do it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be on video and all this. Well, anyway, get up there, and we went back and forth. And so the audience we spoke to, about 400 people live in the audience, and we talked to them about these 4 ideas that we've used with all kinds of populations. And the first one was the very thing that I spoke of, which was breathe. And we went through that technique. We went in at another point to relax the body. So systematically, even as you're sitting here now, driving a car, as long as your eyes are open, you just systematically relax yourself from the head down so that you feel the groundedness go down as your body relax more as you ground down to the bottom. Just take a minute. You could do it like that. We also talked about unplugging from technology, and there was some part in there we were trying to make a humorous point where I pick up my phone and I act like I'm taking a selfie, and Angela says, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" We're taking a selfie. But we're in the middle of a TEDx talk. So we're making light of the absurdity of how, sort of like I was saying with the Colorado River, to make a point that unplugging from technology is so important. You know, we ask executives and sales team leaders often, when we go into organizations, we'll ask, how soon, and we'll kid them, we'll say, like, be honest now, we'll know if you're fibbing or not. How soon after you wake up do you pick up your cell phone? Christie, I would say 99% of them say before I get out of bed. And when you do that, you actually cause an initial overwhelm, stress to the mind and to the body. You start off the day poorly, when really they and all of us, I think, want to start off with clearer minds. So we try to get people to unplug. And then the last thing that we talked about, at least on there, was about working with your thoughts. You know, we were talking about thoughts earlier, but, you know, people really can be so negative about the world and themselves. So it might be cultivating gratitude. So, you know, before you go to bed at night, you write down 3 things you're grateful for, 3 different things a night, or you could do it in the morning. You also could just be aware of when you really start putting yourself down, you can shift it from, you know, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm such an idiot, or, you know, I'm going to lose everything or whatever. You have that ability and that choice to be able to shift that, to turn the wheel to, I got this, or, you know what, it's going to be okay. I'm sitting here right now. No, it's not the end of the world. It's okay.
Yeah.
You can reassure yourself and turn the wheel. So those techniques were some of the ones we did in the TEDx talk.
Yeah. Affirmations and gratitude practice is so huge. You know, are you familiar with the Best Self Journal? Have you seen those? Yeah.
Well
so
done.
that was one of the first journals I had actually come across that included one. It wasn't this incredibly intense, overwhelming process. It was 3 basic lines in the morning. What am I grateful for this morning? And oftentimes it would be a 1-word answer for me or 2-word answer or whatever. And then at the end of the day, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for today? And what did I learn? It doesn't matter if you checked all those things off the list, because I'm a box checker. Dwayne used to laugh at me. Dwayne used to laugh at me because I would write a list and I would draw a little box next to every to-do so that I could actually put a check in the box.
Oh, I know. I love it. Because I swear to do the same thing to this minute.
It's very funny. I think my journal today even has those little boxes in.
I love it.
But that take stopping and not saying my day is made up of check marks and boxes. My day is made up of these experiences, and this is what I've learned. I think that's huge.
Yeah, no question about it.
Congrats to you and Angela on the TEDx talk. That's a real accomplishment. And
thank you. We really hope, Christie, that it helps a lot of people. And it's exciting to think, could it help somebody over in India or somebody in, Seattle, whoever's going to listen. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's what an incredible platform. I'm not sure if they realized what they were building when they built it, but that's a pretty unbelievable system.
It's a great system.
Yeah. So we're coming up towards the end of our time, and there's a couple of questions that we ask every interviewee that we bring on the show. So one is, do you have a favorite sales or leadership book that you've liked over the years, or maybe something you're reading now?
Well, there's a couple, and one that I go back to a lot to read and reread is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Essentialism. And I really like that because, some of it goes contrary. In fact, I was writing actually on social media about this today, about that less is more, and then being, how could being still and meditating or taking pauses, how in the world can that make you more productive? But we know that, as you pause, you're able to discern what really matters. And you make decisions on, what is best, and you can cultivate more joy and all of these things that he ends up talking about. Now, I know that one of the things that you speak about is noise, right? One of the topics. And I had the pleasure of seeing you do that recently. Did an amazing job.
Thank you.
In that you talked about reducing, clutter. And in that book, he ends up talking about the clutter, not just the physical clutter, but the mental, emotional clutter, and making different decisions. So I really like that book, but I also like I like this Start With Why book by Simon Sinek. Mm-hmm. I like that as well. He's pretty darn good. Speaking of innovative, and one of the things that grabbed me about that whole thing with him, that his reduction of what works so well with innovative, inspiring leaders, that they all act, the most inspiring ones tend to act similar in their approach to one another, and that is basically that they act and communicate from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Yeah.
So
people don't buy what you do; they buy why you do it. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
I love that. That might have been an inspiration for the title of this podcast.
Oh yeah, I love it. Of course. Beautiful.
Yeah. We'll give Simon his credit, his due, right? That we were definitely inspired from that perspective.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Very cool. So speaking of why, tell me, what is your why?
Well, it's interesting, because if you, in his book and in his talk, he's talking about the how and the what and the why, and so let me just start with this. Like, the what that I do is coaching, speaking, teaching, and training, right? Mm-hmm. And the how I do it is working with individuals, meeting with them online like we're doing right now on Zoom or on the phone or in person, with organizations as keynotes and, training and breakouts, et cetera. And the why is for me, but both Angela and I, our why is to help individuals and organizations diffuse stress and live healthier, happier lives and be more productive, because we believe that these are our talents and that everybody has this ability to be able to reduce their stress and really feel better the way we're designed to feel better. We're not designed go through life just constantly suffering as much as people do. So I would say that's the why.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fabulous one. Just thinking about mindfulness and the space that it can make in your life. And it's funny how the themes of what we've talked about today have really, I was thinking, I'm like, wow, this really kind of resonates with my talk on eliminating the noise a lot, right? What's the soundtrack in your head? And it's so critical because we feel, and I suffered from this, is that you feel as though life is just so overwhelming, regardless of what's in it, right? So it's because it's all self-induced. It's all created by all those noises in your head. And that mantra of I am here is powerful. That's really powerful.
It is. And Christie, I would say this, that's a very short meditation. Now what I'm about to say, people don't have to do this, but, Angela and I meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. Now, there's an old, it actually was this old saying that if you're too busy to meditate for 20 minutes, you need to meditate for an hour.
I think I've heard that one.
Which is the paradox of this whole thing about meditating. How in the world can I sit still and then be more productive? Well, it's based on the idea, if you can sit yourself still. For me, look, I'm type A person by design, and I do check box like
right.
But if you can sit yourself there and focus the mind where more and more you lean away from the stream of thoughts, sort of like a waterfall, and you lean back into sort of like the recess behind the waterfall, you really become more collected and you're calmer, you get more clarity, and you're then able to be more precise when you're selling something or you're doing something. You're not just selling, you're working with somebody in an organization or in your family. You can actually be present and be more precise and actually be listening versus going, okay, when they stop this, I'm going to tell them this, or they're talking and you're worried about, well, how am I going to pay that over there? Instead, you're right there.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot of old wisdom, and but again, it's some people say, well, I could never meditate. Like I said, as a type A, I used to be very anxious. I would not be able to close my eyes for 2 minutes at a time, and now how can I meditate this long every day? And I've done it many years, but you just start to build a slow habit.
Yeah.
And none of us are too old. That's really good news. We're not too old. Good news, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Yes, I'm calling myself an old dog. But no, you really can start to feel better, which you deserve, and you can be more effective if you'll be willing to just slow that in and have some belief, one, that you can be different, and number two, make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I consider myself a work in progress on this. So maybe you'll be my accountability partner. I'll need to work towards that. I know that Jeff has actually instituted a mindfulness or a meditation practice over the last year or so, and he really credits it for a lot of what he's been able to accomplish. He's written a book this last year.
Wow.
He's really expanded his business. There's been a lot of things that have opened up for him.
Gosh.
And I think because he was present and aware and there, and not that he wasn't before, but he really approached each day with intent and purpose. So I am, like I said, I am a work in progress, and I do work through these things. And I have a lot of intent, and the starting the business, and especially the coaching training that I've received recently, has been huge in that. But for those of you out there that are listening, and maybe you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I could do this. Maybe start with a couple of minutes. Do whatever you can, right, to work your way into this. And I have had those breakthrough moments of, wow, I can see the big picture,
yes.
Right? There was something there that wasn't there before, simply because I stopped and took notice. And I think that's huge. Thanks, Dennis. And that was Dennis Buttimer. Dennis and his wife, Angela, have the Atlanta Center for Mindfulness and Well-Being, and they have a TEDx talk called Mindful mojo for peak performance. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. We'll also put a link to Dennis's contact information if you'd like to get in touch with him. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our Mindful Mojo topic, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And remember, when you understand your whys, your hows and your whats get much better. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for listening to us on the Why and the Buy podcast. If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at the Why and the Buy on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Talk to you next week. How about the music on this podcast? We call them our house band. They call themselves Haskins, and they're based out of Plymouth, Michigan. If you want to hear more from them, go to haskinsmusic.com and check them out.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.